And we're live.
Amazing.
Okay.
All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome to Saccharam's debut podcast. Get ready for something new. We're focusing on writers submitted poetry and prose, which we'll read and review right here. I'm Sylvia Kalina, and I'm here with Joseph Kane. Almost a month ago, Joseph and I had the crazy decision to join publications. And it was with one simple idea in mind to create audio content together. And in doing so, build a unique and experimental collective for writers and artists. We hope that these podcasts that we share with you will be enjoyable and spark some great thoughts or inspirations for you. And so, with that, today our featured poem was submitted to us by Otelia Jones. It's titled On Love and Relativity, and you can find her Substack publication, which is called The Monday to Friday Poet, and we'll make sure to include the links so you can find her. And with that, we'll jump right into it and have Joseph read the poem.
Yes. Okay. On love and relativity. I write, therefore I am. But what if one day I read what I have written and no longer believe, as the grace of being evaporates into nothing but spam? Relativity applies to everything but love. Do you believe me? Please nod that you do. I wish today were the end of the world, for the end means the beginning, and the world would be so fresh and new. A childlike force to reckon with, that every galaxy would marvel at, adore it, and protect it from itself, wrapping it in endless waves of consciousness. Simone asked why we hide from those who show they need us. It is the lyre of fear, warning that we might fall and join the ones who came before. I want to love gracefully, not madly. I want to care without fear, to help, to be, to write, to see everything that makes this world before it ends, and then begins, having forgotten you and me. Mm.
So nice. Otelia, we
Yes.
loved your poem. It was an
Yeah.
easy choice for us to start with you. Um, so to start with, on that note, it was interesting for us to get this poem, as the ideas of love and compassion were a topic that Joseph and I explored not that long ago when we wrote a duet poem for Samantha Lazar's Sky Collection publication, which released on May 14th. So it was a special topic for us both, Joseph and I, to talk about. Plus,
Yeah.
the poem is just absolutely beautiful.
Love is lovely.
All right. So we're going to kick it off. We'll go from stanza to stanza with little commentary in between because this poem is just there's so much to it that I think it deserves to be gone through stanza by stanza. So with
Yeah.
that, here we
Sure.
go. I write, therefore I am. But what if one day I read what I have written and no longer believe, as the grace of being evaporates into nothing but spam? So Otelia opens with this very powerful line, I write, therefore I am, which directly engages Descartes' famous philosophical proclamation of cogito ergo sum, which translates from Latin to I think, therefore I am. And I think everybody should know that, or just about everybody should. Otelia makes the strong announcement that writing is a fundamental definition of who she is and her existence. But her immediate questioning also speaks of deep anxiety within this self-definition. And she does this so beautifully by saying, the grace of being evaporates into nothing but spam. So I take this to mean that she's expressing her own fears within that definition of her own potential, meaninglessness, in a world of mass-producing, inauthentic creations, and perhaps even questioning her own value in this vast sea of spam.
Mm. Yeah. It makes me think about the idea of losing love for oneself and the implications. as she's equating her existence with her writing. So, from an abstract perspective, it makes me think about writer's block.
Mm. Writer's block was an interesting point. I hadn't even thought about that actually.
Yeah, I guess the reason I thought about writer's block is because through equating herself as a writer, or equating herself with her writing, she's doubting herself and what she's writing, pondering if it'll evaporate into nothing, but by relating it to spam, showing the meaninglessness of her writing. And it makes me think about stagnation, which creates blocks in the creative writing process. Um, Within this stanza, it seems that she's equating love and belief to the writing process itself. And there's this idea about self love, since she's equating herself with her writing, love for herself would be love for her writing. But again, writer's block would be the fear of unlearning love, losing faith in love when things go sour. But there's hope here that she's grasping onto love as the last resort for continuing through life with grace. Without love, there's no grace in life.
Yeah, it was interesting. I actually really loved how you brought up the writer's block thing. I hadn't even thought about that until you and I discussed it more. But the other thing that I wanted to add was how I liked that Ottilia was pulling from classic literature by using and kind of referring back to Descartes, but also bringing us into the now with a contemporary word using spam, which I really think makes her work approachable and relatable and engaging because she doesn't just talk about light things. Like there's heavy things that she's talking about here. So I really like
Yeah,
that she makes it contemporary.
yeah, it's really cool. Very cool.
So carrying on into stanza two, relativity applies to everything but love. Do you believe me? Please nod that you do. I wish today were the end of the world, for the end means the beginning, and the world would be so fresh and new. Relativity. Yep, relativity from Ottilia's title now comes into play. And she probes us to start thinking about love being the only thing in the world that isn't relative. And in doing so, she does what I would like to call breaking the fourth wall. And for those who don't know what that means, it's a common filmmaking term where the actor looks into the camera to make eye contact with the audience. And it's kind of a no-no in the film world, but I love that Ottilia uses this in that way, as if she's like intimately grabbing us close to help us realize and validate her idea and to persuade us with the words, do you believe me? Please nod that you do. It's almost like you can see her nodding in her head. Like as I was reading it, I'm like envisioning this, but I'm very all over the
Mm,
place, very creative. Um,
yeah, she's trying to
so
convince herself too.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. I think that that's a valid point as well. But it's very intimate that she uses those lines, and I think it's brilliant because again, she's engaging us as the reader to be even more into her poem with her.
yeah. So, yeah, her statement, which broke the fourth wall, was polarizing, but she asks us to believe with faith, and sometimes faith is important for love. Probably all the time. I don't know. Anyways, this idea makes me think about the need for trust and surrender with love. So here, this stanza creates deep thought about how love relates to relativity. And Einstein was quoted as calling love gravity in a letter he wrote to his daughter. He said, when scientists look for a unified theory of the universe, they forgot. Oh, sorry, when scientists looked for a unified theory of the universe, they forgot, sorry, the most powerful unseen force. Love is light, the that enlightens those who give and receive it. Love is gravity because it makes some people feel attracted to others. Love is power because it multiplies the best we have and allows humanity not to be extinguished in their blind selfishness. Love unfolds and reveals. For love we live and die. For love we live and die. Love is God, and God is love. Um, and it's also a gravity that brings one. This is me talking now. It's also a gravity that brings one to have passion and ambition for their work, like how we write for the love of it.
Yeah, I was actually really excited when you discovered this. It was all very new to me, and I had no idea that Einstein got into this
Yeah.
kind of discussion. So, yeah, we had a great conversation about that, which is another good sign that the poetry that you're reading is really well written and incredible because it really makes you, it pulls you out to
Yeah.
think and find new topics and discuss.
Yeah, I
So we
never
definitely did
read
that.
that. It's great. Yeah. It's so beautiful. He wrote it to his daughter too. It's really cool.
Hmm. Yeah, so this kind of circles us back around to the first stanza when I opened with, or Otelia opened with, I write, therefore I am. So having a love for what we write and relating that to who we are and to what we write spirals back to the idea of self-love. If we write for the love of it, then we write what we write. Wait.
Yeah, we
If we
love it.
write for the love of it, then we love what we write. And if we are what we write, then we love who we are. Joseph made that for me. Like I was thinking about it, it was crazy. We tripped all over ourselves. I did anyway. But yeah, little
Yeah.
philosophical circle for us.
And I'm going to talk about chaos, and that's interesting. Maybe it creates chaos or emptiness in us if we don't have self-love. The idea of relativity not having application of love reminds us of the dissonance that love can have when it isn't nurtured with things like trust, vulnerability, and compassion. Going back to the statement that relativity applies to everything except love, we can see that in how love often seems to not follow the laws of the natural world.
And I feel like this stanza is also Otelia trying to perhaps cleanse herself of the fear of possibly being irrelevant and collecting like just a piece of spam, which she indicated in that first stanza. But then that now moves us into the idea of love perhaps transforming us in an ongoing cycle of death and rebirth. So your comment about the laws of the natural world moves us into the ideas of spirituality being better equipped to tell us about love, or perhaps what is true love, which then will bring us into stanza 3. A childlike force to reckon with, that every galaxy could marvel at, adore it, and protect it from itself, wrapping it in endless waves of consciousness. A childlike force to reckon with is like so beautiful, that line. Because we think of children as pure light and bright, and everything is attainable and doable for them with no boundaries or restrictions.
Yeah. Um, yeah, so we start with a rebirth, describing love as a childlike force. And this makes me think about how literally having a child can replenish your capacity for love or rekindle it. I mean, I don't have a child, but that's what I hear. And
It's
also,
true.
yeah, it must be true.
It gives
Um,
hope.
yeah, hope. Yeah, and it gives you like purpose. If you don't have purpose, you have a kid. Well, now you got a friggin' human being.
Mm.
Anyways, also more metaphorically, how like starting with a blank page can rekindle your love with nature and the world through the writing process, since she's relating herself to her writing from the beginning.
Mm.
And she introduced the idea of protecting it from itself, it being a child, but in the context of love, where you learn it needs to be nurtured and not left to the devices of fear and unpredictability that a careless world has a potential to destroy. It needs structure. It
Mm.
being the child, yeah, being love, yeah,
Well, yeah, the child love, all of it. Because here is where she now elevates the whole idea of love to a cosmic scale. And one other thing that I love too is she says, adore it and protect it from itself, which suggests that she's not saying that love is perfect and it's not free from destructive vulnerability, even within such a pure cosmic scale, like on a universal collective level or by spiritual consciousness, making
yeah,
it kind of our human duty to protect the sanctity of love.
yeah.
Which leads us then into stanza 4, which goes, Simone asked why we hide from those who show they need us. It is, it is the lyre of fear warning that we might fall and join the ones who came before. So in the very beginning of the poem, something that I neglected to say was that Ottilia had dedicated the poem to Simone Weil, and a writer that we find on Substack, which we'll get into. But let's first approach the idea of Simone Weil. She was living from 1909 to 1943, and she was a famous French philosopher, a mystic, and a political activist. And she was a supporter of revolutionary socialism and deeply committed to fighting for workers' rights, and just all around was a voice of being great empathy for those that were oppressed. And she believed that extreme suffering reveals human misery and can drive individuals towards God. So she was also known for emphasizing the importance of communal belonging and spiritual grounding. So in referencing Simone then, Ottilia asks us to question, why do we hide from those who show they need us? And that just points to the fundamental human paradox of, despite our capacity for love, why do we repeatedly retreat from vulnerability and connection? And then I like how Ottilia goes on with the really lovely metaphor of the lyre of fear. And if you don't know what a lyre is, it's a U-shaped harmonious harp that was especially used in ancient Greek times. But in this context, perhaps playing the inharmonious sounds of discord serve as a sort of warning that we should not pay attention to the gift of love, lest we fall victim to the opposite, such as our ancestors have done before us. Or maybe even losing oneself in caring, sharing, or showing love.
Yeah, it's an oxymoron.
Mm.
Yeah, it makes me think about how it's easier to neglect love in order to stay comfortably numb, or sometimes it's easier to neglect love in order to stay comfortably numb, and the fear of failure to love fully often creates stagnation, which ironically causes us to hurt the thing we are actually caring about most. By getting into bad mental loops, effectively destroying the very thing we ought to be protecting.
Mm.
And and that just brings us to the idea of building legacies, and how when we neglect our love for the things that matter most, we may die without leaving a mark on the world.
Right. And the idea of leaving a mark is not something that needs to necessarily be like world record type mark. I think Ottilia is trying to say that, and Simone as well, it just needs to be the idea of loving properly, that the legacy we leave behind should be one of love.
Yeah, it's more
And
important than any world record. Like, yeah,
mm,
yeah, that's the greatest thing you can do, is leave love behind. Yeah.
yeah, if we should be consciously choosing to leave our mark by the way of the legacy of love, then that is actually more than enough.
Hmm. Yes.
So then we'll move on to stanza 5. I want to love gracefully, not madly. I want to care without fear, to help, to be, to write, to see everything that makes this world before it ends and then begins, having forgotten you and me.
Hmm.
So with this final stanza, I think it's just a summary of the whole poem, really. And Ottilia opens the pronouncement of her desire in love, which doesn't seem hopeless to me, but instead a recognition that while individuals' lives cycle between beginning and ending, the underlying forces of love and renewal still persist. And if she and we are able to show this in the ways of love, perhaps we can all benefit from this dream. And of course, I don't think it's just a writer's proclamation, but I also think that Ottilia is depositing the idea for the reader to listen to this message and to do the same, not to turn our back on those in need, but to partake instead in the dream of pursuing it along with her.
Yeah, and this final stanza, of course, brings up the ideas of loving with healthy attachment styles and the worrying about a broken heart, which are the defense mechanisms that don't allow us to love fully. But if we have grace and we aren't loving in a transactional manner or worrying about it being reciprocated, everything will be all right, because we're doing our duty as light workers and fulfilling our will to be lovers in a world battling with ideas of what love should really be, when in
Mm-hmm.
reality the sharing of love passes on tenfold, even if we don't see the immediate effect of it. And I like the idea that our, like, having your will be to love is like one of the beautiful, most pure things that you can do. Like free will,
Yeah.
free will. If your will is love, then your free will is a good thing. Yeah. All right.
Yeah, and I kind of want to bring this up too because I think it summarizes really nice before we even get into the rest of what we were talking about. But I really like how you and I got into the topic of this idea of how everyone today is so afraid to love, so they start secluding themselves. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to protect love
Yeah.
because we're eliminating love from our life. You know, like in order to be loved, we have to give love. And to seclude oneself from love doesn't solve the problem. So no matter how afraid we are of love, we
Yeah.
still need to be putting ourselves out there. And I really loved when you and I talked about it to talk about love, love, love.
Yeah. That's
But
awesome.
I mean, it's so true in today's world, especially. There's so many people that I think are secluding themselves too much, and they're not having those direct contact, informational exchanges, loving exchanges, whatever, these abilities to share each other with each other and feel love and show love.
Yeah, we're all using these like labels and these ways of life to protect us from each other instead of just
Mm,
giving in. Like, I don't care what you believe. Sometimes you just want to love someone, you know?
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's beautiful. Yeah.
So yeah, we're going to kind of wrap that up. One of the things that I really wanted to make a point to address, though, is that I really loved the artistic quality and nature and the lyrical quality of
Mm,
On Love and Relativity. I think Otelia writes with this really beautiful. It's it's very understandable, very much able to grasp it and attach to it, but it's also got this beautiful quality where the word choices and the metaphors really sink in, causing us to pause in the beauty of the piece. It's free verse and got a really lovely rhythm to it. So when it's read out loud, it's almost musical, which I really love and appreciate. And I know you and I both write in that manner. So it's just really nice to be able to attach to that in someone's writing. Not that it's necessary all the time, but it was just something that really I fell in love with.
yeah.
So I had mentioned earlier that the beginning of the poem had been dedicated to Simone Weil, but also Otelia had dedicated the poem to a fellow Substacker. And I apologize if I get the pronunciation wrong. I'm going to say it as Tamara Jacobson. She's got a publication on Substack called Muse Guided, and I subscribe to it. It's fantastic. She's one of the top rising writers right now, I believe, in philosophy,
Mm,
but it could
yeah.
be literature, which I mean, it's one and the same, but I think it's for philosophy.
Yeah, it's false.
So, along with Otelia, um, I have a great love of reading Tamara's writings and musings, and she describes herself as one who explores the intersection of human experience, literature, and the art of her publication being a space where philosophy and creativity intertwine. She has an academic background in philology, specializing in English and French literature. So Tamara ended up writing a really beautiful response since the poem had been dedicated to her. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to read word for word what that response was, because not only is it just a beautiful response, but it's poetry in itself as well. And I think it's really pertinent to consider what Tamara wrote. Oh, what a spiraling gift this poem is, like a comet stitched from yearnings and metaphysics, trailing fire behind the silent gravity of its questions. Thank you for this gift, Otelia. I receive it not just with honor, but with trembling recognition. Let me speak back. This is no ordinary dedication. It is a seance at the edge of thought where Simone whispers in her quiet blaze and I feel my own pulse answering back. You've folded the void into a lullaby, then pierced it with a child's clarity. Relativity applies to everything but love. Yes, and still love breaks every law without even pretending to follow them. I don't want to be remembered. I want to vanish like mist in sunlight, having burnt clean through, having touched, helped, written, seen, as you said, before the world forgets and begins again in some other grammar. Simone knew the ones who need us are mirrors, not burdens, but mirrors But by being mirrors, they demand that we see. And that's where the terror lies, isn't it? Not in giving, but in the sudden unmasking of what we never dared believe we had. You write like someone who remembers what the soul knew before it had words. You had You asked holy questions with unholy honesty. I bow to that, and I answer not with belief, but with allegiance. Powerful words.
Yeah, it's so
Powerful
good.
words.
Very nice.
So, anyway, we want to bring this very first episode, this podcast, to a closing. We're going to work out the bugs as we go,
Yeah,
and I hope that
we did. We did it.
I think we did. I think we did. We did quite well.
It's great.
And we really appreciate everyone who's tuning in with us and experiencing this new venture with us. Huge thank you goes out to Otelia Jones for sharing her beautiful poem on love and relativity.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Yes, and not only did she share that, but then she gave us the added bonus of a poetic afterword by Tamara from Muse Guided.
Hmm.
Yeah, I have to tell you, Joseph and I honestly sat and probably discussed this poem for at least two different sessions, at least an hour apiece. Like we just really dove into it
We
as we
talked.
do.
We just talked for like 3 hours today, so
Yeah.
probably more like 5, 6 hours.
Well, some of it was getting our scripting down, but yeah, I mean, at the
Yeah.
end of the day, this is what I love the most about really good poetry. I think I might have said it in the beginning, but it causes people to pause and to research more, and we're really thankful for the gift of your poem, Otelia.
Yes. Thank you very much.
So with that, I don't know if we'll be back next week or bi-weekly. We haven't quite figured that out yet, so stay tuned for any updates. And be sure to subscribe and spread the word for us. And we thank you for listening so much. And I know that we'll be back soon.
We're podcasters now. Great.
There's our end.
Awesome.
Yay!